Today, I'm going to be showing you the essays that I used when I applied to MIT in 2022. I will be exposing the secret strategy that I used to secure an interview, as well as how you can use this same strategy to elevate your application. So, let's get right into the essays. Now, unfortunately, I can't access my original MIT application. However, I did write all of my essays down on a separate document, so that's what I'll be sharing with you guys today. I obviously cannot show everything to you because some of these essays are more personal to me. So some of the details have been modified and I have decided to exclude some of the essays from my review. However, the exclusion of these essays does not detract from the main point of this video. Okay, let's start with the first essay. So the essay starts with, during the pandemic, I experimented with cooking. The one food that I kept coming back to was Baumkuchen. It is a German dessert that translates to tree cake. The ingredients are almost always available at my home, and maybe that is why I like to cook it so often. I start by making a meringue from egg whites and sugar. By the simple and patient act of beating these two ingredients together, I am able to create glossy, snowy white peaks that look nothing like what I started with. It is magical. You can already see the secret in action actually, but let's keep going. The next step is to make a batter by combining the meringue with flour, baking powder, butter, egg yolks, milk, and honey, taking care not to deflate the batter. Now comes the time-consuming part. Over and over, I spread a thin layer of the batter on a hot, greased pan, and then roll the cooked crepe over a rolling pin. One by one, the layers pile up on the pin. When I am done, I have a little log of Baumkuchen, which, when sliced, reveals rings, like tree rings. I think the real reason I make this dessert so often is because it requires patient repetition and a delicate hand, which together have a calming effect on my mind, especially after a stressful day. It is my meditation, and a tasty one at that. So one of the important bits of the essay is that I include the process. I use words like taking care, magical, simple and patient act, which are rather basic words, but they add a huge story element, and they make it more immersive. I'm actually going to go over in another video how you can transform any boring and generic essay into a standout one using this process. I also added a sort of secondary story element by starting off with, maybe that is why I cook it so often, and the resolution to the maybe with, I think the real reason. This takes the reader along with you in the story. Starting off with maybe introduces a little uncertainty, but after taking you through the whole process of making Baumkuchen, you see the real reason why I make it so often. If I started off or simply ended with, the real reason I make this dessert so often is because, then it's boring and you don't really know why. The introduction, process, and resolution is so important, and in my opinion is what makes this a successful story. So the next two prompts have essays which are about my clinical experiences, and I have used variants of these in my other essays, and I will be covering them in another video about how I got into medical school. The essay after that one is a bit more personal, so I won't be discussing that in this video. So the next one is, the first sentence, in my opinion, is unique and literally stands out from the rest of the essay. I don't really see many essays that start off with a single isolated sentence that convey the goal and direct message of the essay straight off the bat. Now, I know it's a rather risky move because developing a story is something that you want to do. However, I think it was worth a shot. Another thing which is interesting is the introduction of a rivalry. I talk about the competition between our school and generic school name. Rivalries are super common within school competitions, but I don't see it really incorporated in essays that much. This aspect makes you more and more human because competition and rivalries do exist. AdCom only sees your essay and your stats, so adding this human aspect makes you stand out from the other essays that are on their computer screen or in their big stack of papers. I will admit, one thing I could have done better was add emphasis on the rivalry aspect. I could have talked about how their school had a huge crowd attend every single competition they competed in, or they had a massive team of hundreds of students, whereas we only had 15 or 20. And when I originally joined, the first 2 years, we had less than 15 people on our team. I also added an anecdote, having an argument with our sponsor, and how even though I lost the argument, I still found ways to make my own change. I talk about the direct impact I had and the real changes that I made while I was captain. And this is important because even though I did mention I was captain of my robotics team in my stats, I didn't really go over in detail about what I did as captain. Showing the reader what I did is essential in displaying that I wasn't just idle as a captain. I had real impact. I also talk about what I learned through one of the mistakes I made as a captain and added an example. This again adds a sense of humanity. And lastly, I included my blog link as part of my application. The next essay's prompt is, please tell us more about your cultural background and identity in the space below. Oh, also when it says optional, it's not really optional. Every essay should be an opportunity for you to showcase yourself and display everything that you have to AdCom. So make sure you use it well. Anyways, from reading this essay, you can tell this is your typical immigrant story. Your parents left their home country to move, some background information about ancestors, grandparents took control of their own lives, and here I am now. One thing I will say is, I need to improve on making this beginning a bit less generic. If AdCom were reading these first two paragraphs, I would immediately think of, yeah, this is your typical immigrant story, using your culture and your background as an advantage. Which isn't necessarily bad, it's just that, if not done right, it can make you seem like a boring and average candidate. So I wish I had made it a bit more unique from the beginning, but I think the interesting bit starts in the third paragraph. Both my grandfathers rebelled against their fathers and shunned the family business, choosing 9-to-5 salaried government jobs instead. So there are two powerful words here that show the real impact of forging your own path and how making that decision has a real impact on your family and reputation. I think one of the interesting hidden aspects that I incorporated here was the fact that my family went against my own family. If you're from an immigrant family, or if you're Asian, or if you have some sort of family business running, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because there's definitely someone in your family, if not you, who want to go against traditional norms. And these communities usually heavily value family support and just preserving legacies. To go against this sort of unspoken rule to follow your path and to go against what is meant for you is definitely a big event. This situation is relevant to a huge group of people, and I was hoping that someone in AdCom would be able to relate to this. So if they do spot this, then I already have something in common with them. Now, unfortunately, this aspect isn't really that obvious, and so I wish I had made it a bit more clear, because you have to read in between the lines to make this conclusion. Adding a part like, the family business was a huge part of our identity, and putting their individual goals first was a foreign concept, would also really improve this concept and make it more clear to AdCom of this sort of aspect that I'm hinting at. I would also remove "it was the popular thing to do" because it doesn't really make the message more impactful. In the last paragraph, I talk about my family coming full circle and encouraging entrepreneurship. I include yet another anecdote of selling origami Yodas on Etsy in elementary school. This also ties back into my stats, where I talk about the entrepreneurship and business clubs that I joined. Another important thing that I would consider when making my application is adding an overall theme. This is important because it makes you memorable. You want to be remembered as that language kid who loves learning about languages and cultures and excelled in multiple language proficiency exams, or that film kid who won multiple film festival awards and they have a passion for movies and directing styles. In this case, this essay is directed towards making me that entrepreneurship kid or that business kid. It's important to mention that in all three of these examples, you could easily talk about the awards and accomplishments you won in your essays, and that's fine. However, that should not be the main focus of your essay, and instead should be one of the more minor or supporting points. Instead, you could talk about your passion for being that blank kid, or the reason for you becoming that blank kid. In my case, I talked about my heritage and how it connects to my passion for entrepreneurship. I think one thing I could have worked on in this essay was how I could have talked more about me and less about my family, but it is what it is. These next two essays are a bit more personal. I might share them in the future, but for now I'm going to skip them. The last prompt, "tell us more about why this field of study at MIT appeals to you," isn't really the best essay on this application. There are many things that I would improve upon, one of them being that it's really generalized. There's nothing really unique or memorable about this essay, unlike some of the other ones. The other thing is that it doesn't really include the secret that I'm about to explain to you. One of the good things though is that it showcases what I have tried and done, which isn't really explained on my stats page. It talks about my process in finding what brought me the most joy, and how I plan to use my passion to make significant change. Again, it's unfortunately a bit too general, and I could have made it a lot more impactful or meaningful. Okay, now the secret you all have been waiting for. 2 words. Be personable. One of the biggest mistakes I see in other people's essays is that they try to impress AdCom with a laundry list of their achievements. Students may even try to incorporate some sort of deep and super philosophical message. That's not what they want to hear. Instead, they're looking for who you are as a person. What are your passions, your dreams, your goals? What are your experiences? What have you learned? What makes you you? You will notice that throughout my essays, I include my feelings, emotions, thoughts, what I learned, my experiences, and the lessons I gained. These are the traits that can turn anyone from just another piece of paper in the stack to a truly exceptional and memorable essay. I've seen videos of people talking about maple syrup and helping their dad repair cars, getting into top-tier universities. These aren't super crazy things. They didn't spend $10,000 to go volunteer in a foreign country or speak in front of the UN. They just talked about normal, average, everyday experiences. For me, my main essay was about... My main essay was about this. And it's not in the way you think, but I'll cover that in another video. And I was able to get into some of the top universities just by using this. Now, I know what you're thinking. My life is boring. My family isn't that interesting. And maybe that's true. It's definitely true that some people can generate stories easier than others purely because of their background and situation. And I think this aspect has definitely helped me in some instances. However, I was able to use things that didn't necessarily originate from my background or situation, such as me being a captain in robotics and overcoming those challenges, or even the first essay about Baumkuchen. Being able to take something that could easily be mundane and turning it into something that is more emotional and meaningful is such an important skill to have, not just for your essays, but for your interviews and in real life too. Storytelling is crucial to building relationships with AdCom and your interviewers, as well as making friends and connections. I think if you're really good at storytelling and you come from a not so generic or more typical background, you actually have an advantage over those who have a more unique or different background, because you're able to take something that may not be initially as interesting and you're able to spin it in such a way that makes it super impactful and meaningful, and that's an aspect that really impresses AdCom. For instance, look at this story about washing dishes after dinner. Now watch as I make it much more interesting by applying some of the tips I gave you in this video. So that's how you turn a boring paragraph into a real and true story about family bonding and storytelling. I will admit, this is definitely very rough and could have included more drama and emotion. There are also probably some grammatical issues, definitely some flowing problems, and lots of empty supporting points. However, that's not the point. I just wanted to show you how you can take something boring and turn it into something truly impactful. However, I would like to emphasize that you must be truthful in your stories. If you try to write about something which isn't true or doesn't exist, it will show. AdCom will recognize that you may not have as many details or you didn't show as much passion in the story. They will find something that they will call you out on. And even though they may not be able to tell that you faked something, they will be able to recognize the difference in your essays. And that could be enough to make them not like the essay or just entirely reject you. It's important to practice adding relatability and emotion in your essays. So make sure you write multiple drafts before you submit. Make sure you follow up on any opportunities given to you, and make every single last character count. Thank you for watching, and good luck to everyone.